Hi, my name is Stephanie Polito, and I am representing myself and Terry Branch in this overview of our white paper in response to the refugee crisis in the Mediterranean. As the European Union faces the largest migrant crisis in recent history, the region's political and civic infrastructures have been stretched to their breaking points. Over 3 million migrants have requested asylum in the EU since 2015, and thousands more migrants have died trying to reach Europe. The policy prescription that we did focuses on key stakeholder countries, including Germany, Hungary, Italy, and Turkey, examining their policies and how they fit into the greater EU policies. And we also explored ways in which the United States and the EU can converge and collaborate. And this overview will focus on those 5 areas that we have identified. But first, a quick overview of the issue. In response to the migrant crisis, individual European countries have formed ad hoc processes to address the issue, while the overall EU efforts have lacked the cohesion and cooperation necessary to distribute the burden among member states and provide an efficient strategy to resettle and integrate these migrants into European society. Officially, the EU is acting on various fronts, from reforming the asylum process to increasing border security, making the return policy more efficient, and promoting the integration of refugees. Though in practice, the EU's efforts have seen limited results and are highly scrutinized by the general public, as are the policies of the individual member states. In our policy prescription, we laid the foundation by examining the EU migration policy, the EU security policy, their economic policy and integration policy, and also comparing that to the US system that is currently in place. The United States and the European Union have a long history of mutual support and collaboration. The refugee crisis presents a unique opportunity to combat this global issue in a coordinated effort. Though the EU asylum process differs substantially from the US refugee process, there are areas where both systems can coordinate and complement each other. It is recommended that both parties seek to facilitate these areas of congruence while ensuring the best interests of their respective citizens. The first of the 5 areas that we have identified is support of Turkey and Italy. So support of these 2 countries through security cooperation should include a few key areas. First, the direct support of funding through cooperative efforts to train and provide technical assistance to immigration processing centers in order to facilitate and aid in reducing the backlog of asylum applications that are currently kind of in limbo or in processing. This would help to reduce wait times and also facilitate US knowledge and the relationship between the US and the EU data systems and the staff that is on the ground processing these applications. This can be financed through the State Department diplomatic programs, specifically diplomatic policy and support funding, which covers population and international migration, as well as the Office to Monitor and Combat Trafficking in Persons. The second area under the support of Turkey and Italy is to facilitate the expedition of movement of denied asylum seekers to third countries and to support the third country agreements between the EU and Turkey and the third countries. The third area under the support of Turkey and Italy is increasing immigration numbers of verified refugees and citizens from Turkey and EU partners individually using skills-based criteria and specifically designated areas where the US has identified a need for skilled labor, so increasing the resettlement of refugees that are processed through the EU. The second area of cooperation that we have identified is shared intelligence with EU and member states. Opportunities are emerging within the EU in the form of security policy. Current use of EU data systems to track irregular migration and human rights data are converging into a potential tool for anti-terrorist operations and law enforcement. So it is our recommendation that the US support these shared data systems in order to for our systems to speak and to be able to identify potential threats and increase the efficacy of vetting of the migrants. And these efforts can be funded through the State Department's Public Diplomacy IT funding source and potentially through the Regional Information Technology Consolidation funding source as well. The third area that we've identified would be joint refugee processing centers in Turkey and Italy. So that would be joint US and EU processing centers in these two countries. Additionally, in order to support Turkey and Italy, it is recommended that the US and EU establish these joint migrant processing centers through collaboration with UNHCR and International Organization for Migration, or IOM. This would provide additional support for country staff in these states, along with facilitating a close working relationship between the EU and US in the sharing of security information, best practices, and resources. This joint effort would be funded through IOM, UNHCR, the EU, and PRM, or the Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migration Overseas Assistance funding, since it would benefit all of these stakeholders. The fourth area of cooperation would be in reference to the presidential determination and shared resettlement scheme in the US. So having resettled over 3 million refugees since 1975, the United States has long been a leader in the processing and integration of refugees. Through great collaboration with second countries such as Italy and Turkey within the EU, it is recommended that the President establish the presidential determination at 90,000 refugees for fiscal year 2019. Joint migrant processing centers in Turkey and Italy will ensure more efficient, timely processing, along with greater security measures as migrants are vetted through EU and US databases. This would benefit not only the migrants that are processed and resettled in the United States, but would also offset the expenses for Turkey, Italy, and ultimately the EU. For these reasons, it is recommended that funding be shared among the EU and the United States Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migration Overseas Assistance funding. The fifth area for collaboration would be intensive cultural orientation, or CO, pre-arrival. Current CO offerings provide only the basics and are not sufficient for preparing refugees for resettlement. It is recommended that CO and English instruction begin immediately upon UNHCR registration. CO instructors should begin teaching Western concepts of society along with English. This will serve refugees well regardless of their destination country. CO must be available in each camp and mandatory for all adult migrants. Children should attend regular school and child-focused CO in order to prepare them for their new life elsewhere as well. It is anticipated that earlier CO instruction will result in faster integration into a migrant's new community, including employment, social navigation, and language acquisition. Intensive overseas cultural orientation would be funded by PRM and IOM as it currently is funded today. The opportunities for cooperation in migration in the refugee crisis are increasing every day as our policies evolve and as our databases evolve. And there's a lot of room for collaboration between the EU and the United States as more alignment comes into view. Efforts to improve Europe's contribution to its own internal safety and security are reflected in recent policies in virtually every sector. The European Union and the US have had a strong bond in responding to crises such as the migrant crisis over the years. And these areas for collaboration would only increase this relationship and benefit both stakeholders, populations, and opportunities for economic growth and growth in general. So for these reasons, we ask for your consideration in order to secure a more stable and prosperous future for the United States, the European Union, and the international community that looks to both for leadership. Thank you.